Thought I'd take you a journey around Hillsborough football ground. I've done it before, but I had a problem with the sound that time, and I think I can do a better version of it this time. So this is my better version. We're actually on Minster Rd, and I'll show you where my journey started. At Hillsborough, just here on Minster Rd. My great grandma lived, and you'll see the picture of my grandparents holding me in their arms just here on this road. So there used to be a row of terrace here that dropped into the River Don. Just here was what I remember as being a supporters shop where you could buy memorabilia and football shirts and things like that. But that's a long time back. I was born in 1964, and I would have been going to Hillsborough as soon as I could walk. I can remember being a kid, being in the yard here looking up onto the old Spion Cop, and then as soon as I was old enough to walk, I used to go in the stand on the Leppings Lane. But it's so changed around here drastically. This wouldn't have been dual carriageway back in the past. We'll have a quick tour around the ground. I'll show you from the outside the best I can. So just down here you can see us passing over the River Don. There was some flooding at Hillsborough a number of years ago which ruined the pitch back then. But I know when I first started going on the Leppings Lane as a young lad, it seemed a long journey from me great grandma's house we're now just coming behind the Spion Cop. Used to be able to see it from my grandma's yard, the back of it, and you could hear the roar of the crowd in the house. It used to shake the house. So we're looking down towards South Stand down there. But I've been on there for 49,000 against Liverpool in a quarter-final of the League Cup night match. I've also been on there 43,000 against, trying to think now, Burnley. Quarter-final at FA Cup, another night match that we won. Get some different angles on it as I go along, but I'm going to just show you up Erridge Road. Just get across the dual carriageway. So you can see the bridge, railway bridge right up there. Used to park right up there and then walk down from there with all the fans. So we stood on Erridge Road South here, and you can see the view of the Spion Cop from the back. So the late 80s, they put a roof on it and they also levelled it off, so they actually increased the capacity on there from 16,000 to 23,500. Used to be absolutely electric on the Cop, and it's never been the same for me since All-Seater came in. The atmosphere died for me that day, but I have got some happy memories of watching Sheffield Wednesday. That's why I thought I'd do this quick tour around the ground for you. So there's some wall art appeared on the wall since I last videoed it, and I love wall art, quite appropriate. So I'm Wednesday, even though I don't go anymore, I always want to see Wednesday do well above United. But the laughable thing is, when I went round Bramall Lane, every single road around Bramall Lane's shut down. And look, we're on a busy dual carriageway, and this one never gets shut down, I can assure you of that. But in 1966 we had posts down here with all the flags in for the various different countries when we had the 1966 World Cup in England. But I would have chosen Wednesday winning the FA Cup over England winning the World Cup. That year Wednesday lost 4-2 to Everton after being 2 goals up. So that's a different angle on the Kop. And then I can just show you the peak of the south stand. It's still very traditional looking Hillsborough, and I love that element of it. But I remember the night matches coming to Hillsborough with the floodlights as you walk down Erries Road, big floodlight pylons, and you could see the light shining down from a distance. It was really atmospheric. But this back of the cantilever, built in the early 60s, is still iconic now. It looks absolutely tremendous. It probably wants a bit of a paint on the back. I wish they show a bit more love to Hillsborough on the maintenance side of it. But it's not changed much since that particular day, which I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to get drawn into it. I have my own feelings on that, and they're not what the mainstream media say either. So back of here we've got the mega store. I'll just pop across the road for a mega store for you. It's just so fantastic. Back of that cantilever holds about, well, it did hold 10,000, but due to certain health and safety directives it's been reduced. I don't know where it is at the moment. But just here, where we've now got the superstore, was actually an indoor gymnasium or whatever, where they could play football inside. So I think that's all done at Middlewood now, but that gives you an idea. That's the mega store at the back of the ground. There's quite a lot of people hanging around though and walking around, but we'll just carry on down here. Just taking us down to Wadsley Bridge. I'm going to cut through to the Leppings Lane end. I'll tell you a few facts about Leppings Lane end, but I said I'm not getting drawn into what happened that day. I don't believe, and I don't think anybody from Sheffield at that time believes what's happened since in the media and courts and everything. We believe something else happened that day, but we're not allowed to talk about it, so I'm not saying anything. But just along here on Minster Rd, I think at one bit it was a car park, and I can't understand why Sheffield Wednesday didn't buy this area of land and put a bridge across. They could have put all the facilities on that side. But I'm just going to turn off down this little road here. Hillsborough's so much more different to how I remember it as a kid. Now this is one of the problems with expanding Hillsborough. You've got this row of terraces down here. You'd have to buy up all these terrace houses, I think, to really expand Hillsborough. I think you'd struggle with that. But originally, before Wednesday came to Owlerton, they were known as the Blades, Cutlers, whatever. And when they come to Owlerton, they got called the Owls. But there was actually a vote made on whether Sheffield Wednesday would move to Hillsborough or Carbrook in Attercliffe, and the fans voted for Carbrook in Attercliffe, but for some reason they moved the football ground here. I think they got the land cheap, I don't know if it was originally part of Hillsborough Park, because Hillsborough Park would have originally been a stately home. I don't know if the land was gifted to them, but we'll get on to the Leppings Lane end and I'll pick up from there. So we're now on the Leppings Lane end. It's like they're doing something with the road round here. So like I said, I'm not talking about that event, but what I'm going to talk about is now looking at the Leppings Lane. That was built for the World Cup. Now I'm surprised it's still here, it's not been upgraded, but I've been on here in, I think it was 1979-80 for a Wednesday United derby on Boxing Day. We had 50,000 in that day, or just short of 50,000. There was 4,500 in the top stand. Absolutely perfect. There was absolutely zero issues with 4,500 of us sat in that top stand. I don't know what's ever changed on that factor. And I was sitting in there from about probably 68 as a young lad, young boy. And then as I got a bit older, I migrated down onto the standing. Now that day, when we had a full house against United, I looked at the old footage of the Leppings Lane in the second half. Before United were getting absolutely hammered that day, because we beat them 4-0. It was 1-0 at half time, Ian Mellor goal. But early in the second half, when you look at the footage from that match, there was about 5 rows of spare capacity at the front of the Leppings Lane. One of the issues was actually putting fences on it and then putting the fences in between as well. So that day when United came, there were fences at the front, but there was no fences. Like, there was 3 segregated areas after that, one but you just came in and you could move anywhere. And then what they did is they put separate areas because of the fans charging each other. So that was one of the issues that day. But there's the other issue that the folks of Sheffield and Nottingham know what the other issue is. Like I said, I'm not going to say. But at one bit, you can see the wall for the turnstiles. Well, the wall came right up to just here, I think it was. And there was a wall down where that line is. So I remember for Boxing Day, we queued up here, we came, at whatever time we came, I was stood next to a police horse. And I was sat in there with 4,500 Wednesday fans in the top. Like I said, absolutely zero problems, no problems getting in or out. Now it's absolute nightmare. I think they only like 2,000 in it, an absolute joke. And I think United had about 10,000 in the bottom stand. Now, if I had my choice, I'd be stood on the Leppings Lane at the bottom. I have no issue with it. Just take the fences out. And after that particular day, the next week, me and my dad went down to Derby. My dad said, let's go to next match very quickly, let's just get that out of our minds. And we stood on the away end at Derby. And they'd already took the fences down at Derby. And that's all that really needed to be done, take those fences down. But let's carry on down, we'll carry on down behind the back of the south stand and show you what I can show you. But there you can see the crow's nest. They used to stand in there back in the 1980s. They used to have home and away fans on here standing, and you know, probably the away fans would go over there and then the home fans would come on this side. I've seen footage from the 60s and 70s, Wednesday against Chelsea, full houses, 50,000 in FA Cup. Chelsea and Wednesday fans mixed on the standing on this end. The hooliganism wasn't as bad as people make out, and to be honest with you, it looks worse nowadays. But having spoken to police officers and said, why don't you just put an area in the grounds for the fans to scrap, you know, a special area, and he said to me, well, if if we did that, they wouldn't scrap. He says they scrap most of the time because we're there, we're protecting them from each other, and it's just all bravado nowadays. So we'll just carry on walking round. But the record crowd at Hills was 72,000 against Manchester City. I think that was about 1935. But regularly through the 50s and 60s, there was 65,000 in Hillsborough. So there we've got the River Don. And they used to ferry the supporters away really quickly with the old-fashioned tram network in Sheffield that went in the 1960s. And they just have all the trams lined up and get the crowd away. Nowadays it's a nightmare. It used to be great parking up here, but cars started getting broken into and then become more and more difficult to park. I think the last time I've been to a match at Hillsborough was 2005, 2006. Went to the playoff final, we won down at Cardiff. I was completely ripped off that day, paid the highest price, and I walked in with a bottle of pop. And they refused to let me in with it, but they were selling bottles of pop in the ground. I've never been to watch Wednesday since. Well, sorry, I have once. On my brother-in-law's season ticket. And that is it. We'll just carry on round here to back at South Stand and I'll carry on. So we're round the back of Hillsborough Park just here, but we're coming to the back of the main stand. So what I was going to say is that when I started watching football in the 1980s, or paying for myself, previously to that, my dad would have paid for me. But I was an apprentice back in 1980, and to come in Hillsborough I had to pay as an adult, and it was about 90p to get on the cop. And my apprentice wage I think was £40 a week, so 1 hour's work got me in a football match. Now football to me maybe getting bigger crowds, but it's not the same for me, because football was more than the football. It was the people, the supporters mixing with people on the cop. Now you sit in your own seat. But the other thing was, on the cantilever, it was £5 for a season ticket in 1966. Wednesday were in the top division, first division back then. So it was £5. Now, if you convert it for the inflation rate, the CPI, it works out about £80, £90 in today's money. So what you was paying for the main stand, brand new main stand in those days, to sit in there, it was £5 a season. And if you convert it in today's money, it's 80, 90 quid. Well, now what is it to have a season ticket in the cantilever? It's about, what, 700, 800 quid? So instead of being 70 or 80 quid, you're paying, on top of inflation, you're paying 10 times as much. Since the cameras have got in, since all see at stadiums, the fans to me have been fleeced. So we're on the back of the main stand just here. You can see the River Don just here. But it's an impressive main stand. I've got to admit that. I think it holds about 12,000 now. Got executive boxes in. When I stopped watching Wednesday, this was a stand I favoured to go in, because you could buy a pint and a hot dog, whatever, in the back of it. So if I can find you anything else on the ground, I will do. If I can't, it's end of video. But if you could like the video, follow my channel, click on notifications for new videos in the future. So it looks like The special people have now got their own car park around here. They used to actually have to come down the entrance from Minster Rd. So you can see it says directors and staff car park only. Just zoom in on the owl up there. So one last thing, where you can see the south stand, that's the Cop south stand. Just where the south stand was, I remember a Christie's nightclub being about there. You used to be able to go in for a pint before a match. But one of the things with Hillsborough now, the capacity should be about 40,000, but it's ridiculously low at 35 or 33. South Yorkshire Police have chickens whenever there's a football match. And I've been in Hillsborough long after the incident I don't talk about. It was a full capacity of 40,000, absolutely no issues. Now, Wednesday's got to decide, do they actually upgrade this ground or do they build a new ground? My honest opinion, I mean, you can see my roots with Hillsborough, but, and I don't go anymore, but what I would say is the future for Wednesday is in the east end of Sheffield and a new purpose-built ground. Not one of these horrible modern grounds, but one built on traditional football ground lines, you know, something iconic. So that's over and out from Hillsborough Football Ground in Sheffield.